is 7:02. Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Mr. Panacci?
Here.
Mrs. Powers?
Here.
Mr. Spangler?
Here.
Mrs. Wright?
Here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The superintendent is absent tonight because he is ill. And the treasurer will be reading his recommendations this evening. I would like to take a moment of silence, if we could, please. Yesterday, Bill Monbeck, who was a former board member of ours, passed away. And Pam Campbell's father passed away today. And she is our English coordinator. And I would like to take a moment of silence in remembrance of them. And the board would like to extend our thoughts and prayers to their families. And minutes. I wish to recommend that Board of Education approve minutes for the following board meeting: March 12th, 2012, community meeting; March 26th, 2012, regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
It was moved by Mr. Spangler, seconded by Mr. Armstrong. Roll call.
Mr. Panacci?
Aye.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wright? Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Okay.
Mrs. Baldwin?
This evening, we have two presentations. The first presentation will be by Mr. Kirk Casino from Henderson Incorporated. He will provide information regarding the roofing maintenance.
Good going.
Can you hear me? Perfect. You're doing it. While Jason's setting it up, I just wanted to mention our company, Henderson Incorporated, has been involved in the district since 1995, and what we perform is basically building envelope inspections, doing the asset management programs for them, particularly just the waterproofing of the building. So this evening, what we're going to present is basically just on the roofing. It's going to be a very brief presentation. There'll be questions and answers afterwards, if there are any. But roofing is probably one of the most exciting subjects you'll be able to talk about this evening.
Probably.
Right? So while he's still doing this, we have 5 families of roofing and commercial roofing. You have the built-up roof, which are layers of felt laid into molten asphalt or tar. So the fabric holds the tar and asphalt together as a waterproofer, and the felts are the matrix for its strength. There's never been a roof developed that can surpass the performance standards of a 5-ply tar roof system. There are some in the field now at 80 years. The difficulty with them is the environmental conditions that they create. There's a strong odor for the area, and it's carcinogen, so the use of it is been less. And then along came, real quickly then, the modified membrane, which they produce a felt with waterproofing capabilities at the plant, and they bring that out to the job, the contractor rolls that out. So when that's rolled out and sealed, that's waterproof. Along come the single plies, which are like a rubber inner tube in one case and a plastic sheet on another. And each of these you can spend a half hour on, but you don't want to do that this evening. But they each have an Achilles heel, and they're used widely. They're relatively inexpensive, and they do good service life if installed properly. And after that, you have the polyurethane foams, which is basically a foam insulation sprayed on the building and then coated with a coating. And then the metal roofs. And you have your large metal roofs that you see, the standing seam metals, items like that. There are situations with each one of these roofs. They all have, like I said, an Achilles heel, and they all have a situation that should be addressed before they're considered. My company, Henderson, I think, tries to interact with Stow City Schools in the fact that we try to help them in the decision-making process as to which system is proper for them. On the roof asset management program, to which Stow has been a member since 1995, the focus and purpose there is to extend the service life of the roofs for as long as possible. So the stages would be you're maintaining a relatively new roof, and then you're going to restore that roof as it goes through its aging cycle, and you're trying to hold it back from failing, from ultraviolet, foot traffic damage. You're trying to back that off as long as you can. There's a point where the roof will flip over and it has to be replaced, and you tear it off. But the money saved to get to that point will pay for that roof. And we have a few examples, but I should probably move on. Here, I got some ideas here. So this is the roof asset management I was speaking about. It was initiated in 1995 for Stow City School District. They've been very aggressive at holding on to this. I know when funds are limited, we try to come up with a program that will just fix what they must fix. But they're always aware of the things coming down as the roofs are aging. And the information we try to give them is accurate so they can make informed decisions. Both the administration and the board has been very helpful in that. The goals of management is the assessment of the district's roofs to maximize the service life, to minimize unexpected costs. If the roof ages out and you have changes in weather, like it goes to 20 below, the roof will crack because it's never been to 20 below in 10 years. So you try to minimize those unexpected emergency situations. We have a planned forecast for repair, replacement, restoration. Those are the three things you're looking for in a roof asset management program. And once again, it's a responsible asset management. That comes on both sides with the school district, and also on our side, that we're giving them very clear information that's unbiased, unaffected by other factors. So we work for the district only, and we try to eliminate any factor that would change our opinion on things. I'm an expert on this. So the question is, why maintain? It's a valuable asset. It's your fifth wall in the building. You have four walls. Your fifth wall is the roof. takes the most abuse out of all of them. You know, the vertical wall do not take the abuse a flat roof will take with ultraviolet foot traffic, the wrong system, all of that. But if you think of it as your fifth wall of your building, and it is very valuable, and it has to be taken care of. And you compare it to your car or anything, but you have to take care of it. A failure of a roof, the building has to be, it's not a building anymore, it has to be emptied. It wastes energy. You can have an R25 roof, and if it's wet, it's an R0. It just sucks everything right out of the building, and you can see this when you're driving around, maybe in a slope roof, and there's a light frost. You're driving through your neighborhoods, you can see where some of the buildings are just icy on the perimeter, and then the roof is bone dry, and then also other buildings that the frost is all the way across. Those are well insulated. And the interior environment is covered that. It's a huge problem when you have a catastrophic failure of the system. And the program was developed to try to prevent that from ever happening. No matter what is mentioned by sales representatives, there's no maintenance-free roof. The day they're put down, the following year they need maintenance. This starts. It's a very small sum at first, and it builds up to the point where maintaining, now they have to restore. And then you move it ahead another 10 or 15 years, and you get to that point, you keep pushing it till you get as much as you can out of it, and then it fails. The roofs can fail in 5 years, 3 years, 8 years. I've seen roofs that are 30 years old that have been maintained, and they just keep going. Impressive. I love roofs. Oh, masonry walls. Part of our assessment, we tried to look at some of the masonry situations, because in this case, the water was coming into the building and was thought to be a roof leak, so we investigated it further. And we had water in the wall that was causing deterioration. In this case, the freeze-thaw cycle was blowing the brick face off. And this would be the area that we were addressing. And in the dark areas, there are some bed joint deterioration, things like that. On the interior, the water was coming down and it's peeling the paint off, but there's a lot of moisture. The wall's right above that. This is the same wall. We encapsulated it in metal. It can breathe, there's vents on the bottom and the top, so vapor transfers easily as this thing heats up in the summertime, 90 degrees, freezes, it always has vapor transmission going through it. So you're not going to have anything behind those panels causing you any problems. This is a beautiful job. I mean, I have that in my office. I love that picture, but that was that old crummy looking masonry wall, and now we just gave it another 15, 20 years. This is basically the design that we did there. The wall panels are left out for vapor transmission, and that is what the contractors bid on. This one, what I just showed you was in high school. This is Woodland down the street. They had a similar situation. They had a lot of water in the walls, deterioration, broken bed joints. There's a lot of pictures of this that I didn't bring, but to bore you with a lot of pictures of cracked mortar. That's the walls wrapped. This is gorgeous. It stopped all the problems on that wall. It's good for an eyeball. All right, am I done? I got it. I can go.
You want to talk a little bit about where we're at today and what we're going to be doing this summer after we bid and secure
Correct.
contract.
We did a roof assessment inspection of the entire district this year. This year, I think the district is in very good condition right now. All of the roofs in the district are in maintainable condition. None of them need to be restored. So the whole program this year is just going to be maintenance, which is the first step. They get maintenance, restore, replace. So we pull these things back to maintenance. That would be district-wide, would be maintenance on each building. The one building that is going to be recommended for replacement is just the field house, is a shingled roof. That's failing, shingles are coming out. It's just time. It's going to blow off, and we don't want that to happen. And we looked at it every year, but we first started noticing it about 7 years ago. And we tried to keep it going until now, but I think it's time right now, especially with the maintenance. I'm just really excited myself, because the responsibility of the administration board has gotten the district to this point. I do a lot of work with a lot of districts, and a lot of them have pulled back, even though our insistence that it's $4 to $1. On Echo Hills, the restoration saved the district $140,000. On Woodland, and there's particulars of what happened on that roof system, but on Woodland alone, it was a $200,000 saved to the district rather than losing the roof. So I just think it's a great program. I think it's working out well for everybody in the district. Any questions? That's all I do.
Do you want to touch base with
Yes.
the timelines that you see, maintenance starting, and which buildings are we going to hit maintenance on all of the buildings this year? Field house would be our focus for major repair.
Yes. So the assessment, this 2012 assessment determined that all the schools right now would respond well to maintenance. That would begin immediately upon board approval. The field house replacement will require specification development, advertisement, and whatever follows state law to bid it out properly. So that's a separate project. That would be replaced. So the district and condition
Well, that's good news. We certainly want to hear. Does the board have any questions about?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
When Russ said we were going to have a presentation, and one of the things I know Ms. Morgan was probably talking to you about too, is that we have a particular village set inside for capital improvements inside. Now, there's a lot of different things competing for that money and that prioritize. So are you helping prioritize? Have you set like a 4-year program, 5 years out, and given it to Ms. Morgan and to Russ and Mr. Jones? What you see, our expenses are going to be maybe for the next 5 years. And then we can put that in with the other pot and try to put together like a 5-year spending plan for, it's around 0.6. Yeah, 0.66, which we get about $600,000. I don't $1 million, 6 cents on $1 million. So, are you working with that?
Yes, we are working with the 3 to 5 year projection on what's going to be necessary. Wasn't available for this presentation. The next building coming up as of 2012 information will be the high school. That's coming
High
up.
schools.
The other roofs prior to this coming winter, right now, look pretty good, that we can maintain it. Pushing a 3, 5, 10-year program out, especially in roofing, is difficult. We can go probably 3 years out, and guessing at 5, 10, just because of the weather that northeastern Ohio has. The freeze thaw. When we have a freeze thaw, we have a freezing temperature of 18, and we go to 40. The roofs actually rack, they move. If you were standing there, you would see the movement of the felts actually bending. And if the roof is aged to the point that it can no longer handle that stress, it cracks. So it's very hard to determine.
I understand, in my particular company, we have like 1.5 million square foot under roof. We don't repair it until it leaks.
Nice.
I mean, that's what you find. Is there a point when you talk about extending out, okay, talk about extending out the life, do you see, in your expertise,
point that we may reach where all of a sudden, hey, we have to just do the whole new roof. Or can we keep extending portions? I mean, you can't do that forever.
No, the maintenance restore,
Yeah.
then your next step is gonna be replaced. We resist the replacement of a system as long as we possibly can. You can get to them when they're restorable, and they are restored, it completely protects the old roof from any ultraviolet degradation. It does protect it from foot traffic. Materials used to go on top of them. It's not another roof, it's a restoration product. They're resilient, they can take expansion, contraction, but you then minimize the entire roof. You might have a failure in a corner of that coating.
So you can keep
And
doing this
you have to beat the
restoration.
corner.
I guess my question is, you can keep doing this restoration project over and over?
Yes, and at the tail end, at the end of the life of the roof, you basically do an infrared scan, determining how much water is trapped now in the system, how much has gotten in. And
And that's it.
that's it.
Have you done anything like that on the high school?
We did that last year, didn't we?
We did a scan at Echo Hills, because that was gonna be restored.
This is
The high school is all sloped.
Yeah, last one.
The reason these roofs are still here are because it's sloped. If they were flat, they wouldn't be here anymore.
But we do lose all our gravel.
And the poor choice in design, which is another 5 items, but you initially get the proper design, proper system, proper bid, proper spec, proper contractor. You mash that together with inspections, and you'll get what you bought.
Well, and one of the things we talked about the high school in our discussion, Dr. Jones, Kurt, and I, and we talked about portions of this roof. Since this was a good year, it leaves a little bit of money that we might start piecing and replacing parts of it in portions instead of having to overhaul the whole roof at the same
Right, you
time.
talked about that.
So, a part of our decision comes in when we determine whether or not the cost to restore or maintain it outweighs just bucking up and getting a new portion here this year, next year, go to this portion, and by the third year, have that
That
whole
was,
piece.
that was the point I was getting at, when we have to start doing it, or if we can do that, much better than
Yes.
trying to come up with it at one time.
And that is
So that's what we try to
do.
prevent. In the high school's particular situation, it's formed off enough that you can just do a section. at a
Because I've
time.
seen these walls around several of the buildings for a
Yeah.
while.
So for this, let me make sure I understand, for this summer, we're talking about the field house roof is one that needs to be
Replaced.
replaced. We're talking about just preventive maintenance on existing roofs.
All of the schools.
Also, what does that entail? What are you gonna, when you say preventive maintenance, what is that exactly?
It's basically trying to hide the roof from exposure. So it's gonna be coating with flashing, repairing the blisters, and any splits that are developing that have to be repaired. There's no system to be restored this year.
Yeah.
So the coatings that have failed in corners of that, where it's too much, that's replaced. And the second half is the field house. The high school work has been kind of on the table.
Are there any other questions? This is timely, we do this around this time every year so that we can get a contract in place right before the school year
Summer.
ends, yes. Because this kind of work, as you'll learn also with the asphalt, is contingent on weather. So we need to be able to start at the earliest point. We have a week or two of solid rain, nothing's gonna happen until that rain dries back up, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kuzma.
Thank you very
Appreciate your
much.
presentation.
Yes. And we will proceed after this evening with doing bids. We have to bid for 2 weeks. And then the bids are open publicly and the architects determine the best, lowest reasonable bid, and then we bring that to you. And we're looking for that timeline to be, and I think John will talk about this more extensively, being at the May 29th meeting, we should be able to vote on contracts at that point in time. And that will give the new companies the opportunity to start the first day of that regarding the asphalt project.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? Well, that presentation was the steak, this will be the lobster tail and crab legs here. On the interest scale, I guess what's interesting to see, and Mr. Kuzno said it, you know, districts that we both work for. I'm Bronstein Architects, Akron, Ohio. I'm John Wheeler, been with Bronstein for 16 years. And I will say that a majority of districts don't really take preventative maintenance, I guess, as seriously as you guys do, and you've been benefiting greatly from that. So I commend you, and this board, and previous boards, and of course, you know, the caring and the concern of Dr. Jones and Ms. Mulgren, and we're happy to be back out here and taking a look at your asphalt paving. I think what we're going to go over tonight is what we do every year. We've been doing this for 2005, and when we started, there was a lot of disrepair and a lot of high-end repair, replacement, full depth, replacement of base, which gets very expensive. And now after 7 years or so, we're recommending a lot of seal and striping of the existing playgrounds and parking lots throughout the district. And you're really seeing the benefit of annual, continual maintenance, and it's money well spent, and it's actually saving you money over the long run to invest in the preventive maintenance. I'm just going to kind of go over each of the schools here without boring you too much. I've got some slides. We'll talk about the sealing and striping of the parking lots. There's a few sidewalk repairs, trip hazards, ADA things that we need to correct, and we do this on an annual basis. So I think it's looking really pretty good. Administration, we'll just start here with a little site plan. This is in pretty good shape, and maintaining just the seal and stripe, restriping of that will continue this asphalt lifespan quite well. Echo Hills, there was some significant replacements in the front parking lots last year. And really what we're looking at now this year, because we had such a mild winter and we didn't have a lot of degradation within the parking lots and driveways of a lot of the schools, the playgrounds have never really been dealt with in all the 7 years we've been looking at these things. So now we need to start, we would recommend, before you have serious degradation on some of these playgrounds, and this is one, where we need to kind of correct the alligatoring and pitting that we're seeing going down to the base on the left there. And this particular playground has got a pretty significant crack and some settlements right in the middle of the basketball court. That can all be ground out and replaced and topped without significant rework of the base. Fish Creek, again, this is in pretty good shape. We've got some sidewalks to repair up front here and some chips here I'll show you. And it's always kind of been on the wish list, and it still is, to take that stone gravel playground, grass playground out back and introduce an asphalt playground and a driveway. We are working on some costs for that, but what we're suggesting right now is seal and stripe, repair some of the standing water that we're having a little drainage problem right in the shipping and receiving area. But there's a catch basin right there, so we should be able to fix that fairly easily. And then little things like this that are a trip hazard for students and the public coming and going into the main entrance would be a benefit. What you've done and spent money on in the past in a number of areas is concrete dumpsters, and there are some concrete pads out here in the back for recycle and trash, but we've kind of expanded that. We're into an asphalt gravel area, so that's sufficient. If you have any questions anywhere along, please feel free to ask. Indian Trail, again, very good shape. We did some major work last year in this parking lot. We were suggesting about half of this rear playground get replaced, and that looks a little bit like this right here, where we want to prevent that from getting worse and actually eroding down to the base, stone base. Woodland. This playground is kind of in severe shape. It's got quite a bit of rutting, and we're talking about this area here, and a little bit of maintenance on the asphalt egress pathway on the back side of the school here, and a little bit of driveway repair you'll see up here. This is the driveway on the left. That is pretty severe getting into the base, and we want to fix that. And all of these wet spots on the playground are actually depressions that need to be ground out, rebased. Yeah, maybe that was buses. It's a good, yes. That needs to be ground out and the base replaced and asphalt retopped. Riverview, the sister school here. Seal and stripe, of course, and partial playground replacement. We've got some large areas that are starting to crack and delaminate, and we would probably do about half of that playground this year and project maybe half next year or the year after. Again, it's preventative, much like the roof systems, where you want to, before it gets completely out of control, catch it. And Kimpton is in very, very good shape. We've got a little bit of problem back here by the greenhouse. This is also where handicap, ADA, coming and go occur, and that area is starting to break up a little bit from heavy traffic, and there's some sidewalk issues there. There's a little bit of degradation up here that we're going to look at with the city of Monroe Falls. This is up front, in that front area with the city of Monroe Falls. Some of that was existing, some of that was exacerbated, I think, by the throughput of traffic for about a week or two while they were reworking the sewer lines on the street out front. But this is kind of, typical. You don't want to go much past this, and there's a few spots like that, both in the side parking lot and by the ADA stalls that we recommend being ground out and fixed. Lakeview Highland, you guys have rerouted the buses, and this track of bus down and turn around and pick up along the whole staging area here is starting to show some wear, but it actually survived quite well last year. And there's only minor areas that need to be repaired, and the seal and strength will do very well. The front of Highland is need to repair the sidewalk. We'll probably cut this whole area out and just recast it in concrete. It's trip hazards over half of an inch, and it's a little unsightly. And you have made repairs in the past, and it continues to degrade. So this is looking on that bus track route, and we've got a little bit of break up here that we've got to grind out and work, and some sealing and striping. This is a picture of the work that was done last year at the high school. We haven't finished yet. Based on your approval, we'll proceed with drawings on any corrective measures on all of these projects. But this is a good representation of some of the large areas that have been replaced in the previous years. We've got a little degradation down here, the tennis courts by trash dumpsters, and we've got a large area of concrete sidewalk right here at the front entrance that seems to be holding a lot of water, even though there's a catch basin off here at the green space. I think we can get that corrected and sloped properly. And then the parking lot needs a little bit of dressing and clean up. In areas. Over on the left is that dumpster area. It's getting a lot of wear and tear from the front end loading trash trucks. A little bit of maintenance on the bus garage and driveway back here. We've had a little bit of damage from your volunteers as they were building the press box. There's some curb to replace there. That's not significant, but a seal repair. I think on this and the driveway will continue to work very well for you. This is the parking lot. This is the driveway for the bus. We need to get that corrected before we lose the rest of the driveway by the bus area. So that's the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
If I can add, what we do with the contingent on how much money we have to work with. So you see in each of the pictures that John presented a base bid, which is a seal and stripe, and then alternate bids for all the other pieces and parts to it. And that's what John referred to, based on your approval, will determine how much, as the bids come in, at what point we can afford to go beyond the base bid and prioritize the alternate bids up until we run out of money. And we do that every year, and then what we couldn't afford in this year becomes our next year top priority. So, are there any questions for?
One point, there was, I think it was at Highland or Lakeland, that part of the problem was bus sitting, waiting. That created a ditch and a wheel element we saw in one of those pictures. Went to concrete and eliminated that by turning the traffic in the same way.
Yes.
So the bus is parked on concrete.
Yes.
Would that work on that particular school? I think it would. There was one picture there that looked like a bus track.
Yes, and to my knowledge, while that could have been bus damage at one point on the back of the Woodland Playground, they're not currently using that for bus area, and it's separated from the parking lot. So that could have been full damage or just a really poor base and a very thin topping asphalt on that playground just to save money.
But it's strictly a playground area.
It's a playground area and minor repairs, right?
Under that same vein that Mr. Spank was talking about, and I was looking at, we picked up the trash, can something be done there? Because that looks like that's going to continue to happen again unless we do something, or move them, or do something with those trash boxes.
Yeah, this whole area, you could do the entire aisle where he pulls up in his entire length of the truck, get the dumpster just off the curb there where it currently sits, so we should come straight in and it stays on the new concrete pad.
Would it be just, could it cost, justify it, the cost?
Well, I think the nice thing about the system that we've got in place right now is you can do the worst case things, and then they help us determine what additives or alternates we're going to be able to shop around and buy into to do That's one thing we absolutely. We don't have that currently right now in an alternate, but we, as a suggestion, It's probably a little on the higher end of the.
Yeah, I
the
was thinking if we went
alternates
with
to do.
concrete, would be very,
Because it's a truck duty, 6 inches of concrete, 8 inches of reinforced concrete, plus 8 inches of base. It's
we're just gonna keep putting it.
Yes, right. Now, this year, you could seal and strike would probably cure that, but it's not going to keep it long term. So,
Well, we did do that with the bus garage last year, put a concrete pad in for the deteriorating parts where the buses come in and just sit. And I would like to give credit to Jason and John Damon, also Jason Smith and John Damon for the work that they do in keeping Brown and Stidle focused on where our priorities are and they're constantly.
And that's the thing, we just have to cost justify something
Sure.
like that. Make sure it has a payback.
absolutely. And I think you're seeing the benefit of those paybacks, this year in particular, after the mild winter. We don't have an extensive repairs.
Yeah, we were fortunate back probably about 7 or 8 years ago that we were able to take 6.66 inside the village. Designated just for this, so that can help out.
Thank you, Mr. Willow, for your presentation. We do appreciate it.
So just to sum this up as we move forward, based on what you've seen this evening, there will be bid advertisements that go out. The architects will be drawing up specs and RFPs. There will be pre-bid meetings, there will be a public bid opening, and then there will be a determination made of the lowest, most reasonable bid that will be brought to you in the form of a contract. And the time frame for that, of course, starts tomorrow. And we should have a contract available for the board to approve in both projects, roofing and asphalt, at the regular board meeting on May 29th.
Since we're on maintenance, can we talk very briefly about Echo Hills and the trash problem that we're experiencing annually? Jason got a call from the city. There was a dump set up in the forest behind Echo, and he and his crew had to take care of the dump. I think we should get together with the city and figure out a method to prevent that from happening again. And I don't know how to approach it other than putting signs up from the district and the city that promoted the opportunity for fining for people who do that. I don't know how we can do that, but we evidently have renters in the area that dump their stuff in our forest, and then the next renter that comes and says, we gotta get rid of it. And then we turn to Jason and his crew
And then we
to
pay
get the
for it.
trucks back there to take care of it.
That's true.
I'm sure there's a city ordinance for that, right?
It could be, well, city ordinance and a sign from the district that says, don't do that.
Right.
Dumping prohibited.
That is something that we have talked about and is on our radar, so we'll keep you
Good.
apprised of our progress.
I don't want to be known as the dumper, but I think we ought to be aware of what's going on back
Yes.
there.
No moment. I was just curious, you have at the top of your head what we spent on the asphalt?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't, and, but I can look that up for you.
Yeah.
I specifically asked Mr. Casino and Mr. Wheeler not to divulge any amounts because we don't want to bias the bid process. We want to be pure, but we'll be happy to get you those estimates from what we spent last year, and as a matter of fact, we expect May for this year. And I will say, in both years, the last 2 years, our bids came in way under estimates. And so that's the good news, so.
Still a good bidding climate.
Yes, it is, so we hope for, to get more done for less.
Okay, Mrs. Goldman, your report, please.
Okay, start with item 8, the financial report for March. I wish to recommend the Board of Education approve the financial report for March 2012 as presented in Exhibit number 1.
Moved by Mr. Spangler and seconded by Mrs. Wright. Roll call.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wright?
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Mr. Benacci?
Aye.
Check register, item B for March. I wish to recommend the Board of Education approve the check register for March 2012 as presented in exhibit number 2.
So moved.
Second? Oh, I'm sorry, did you, Mr. Spangler? It's moved by Mrs. Wright and seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wright?
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Mr. Benacci?
Aye.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Okay, item C, tax rates and amount resolution. I wish to recommend the Board of Education approve the tax rates and amount resolution as established by the Sumner County Budget Commission for the calendar year 2012 as presented in exhibit number 3.
So moved.
Second.
It was moved by Mr. Armstrong and seconded by Mr. Benacci. Roll call.
Mrs. Wright?
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Mr. Benacci?
Aye.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Item D, appropriation resolution. I wish to recommend the Board of Education approve the appropriation resolution as presented in exhibit number 4.
So moved.
Second.
It was moved by Mrs. Wright and seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Mr. Benacci?
Aye.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wright?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, this time we're taking comments from the audience. I have a card for Mr. Peterson.
Good evening. Aye.
My name is Mike Peterson, I live in Stow. I service
What is your address, please, Mr. Peterson?
3372 Churchill Downs.
Thank you.
I live in Stow, but I service one of the supplemental retirement plans for the staff and the faculty of the city of Stow. There's been a law change to allow 403B Roth contributions and rollovers. We need an election to allow the participants in the school to take advantage of that benefit. So that's what I have here for you. It's just a simple form. The plan is already here. It's already in place. We don't have to change anything that's in place. We simply make an election that says we allow the participants here to participate in that additional benefit. Questions?
During our negotiations with both unions, we had discussion about the addition of a Roth IRA, and we have been in discussion with the union leadership currently, and the board has their own 403B plan that sets forth how the 403Bs are going to be structured, and what we need to do is bring to the board that plan and insert the 403B Roth IRA. And once we do that, then we will put into place the other vendors that also offer that as an instrument for
So
our
there's,
employees.
so that part, as far as the union negotiations, that is already goes.
Yes.
Is there a time frame on that? Because I have a number of clients that keep calling, saying, I understand this is not permanent. When can I start to do some additional planning?
We're in discussion with the unions right now. I am reviewing resolution language for the board, and we'll introduce that to the board at the next work session, and hope by the end of May that we would have a resolution approved by the board.
Is there any additional information that we can provide?
No. We just have to go through our union contract and take care of those issues.
Because my understanding is all we would be doing is offering a choice to the employee.
That's what we do now.
For your 403B plan, and they could do a Roth or a normal 401(b) roll.
What we did is we just amended our plan, so if you said, I'm putting $100 away and I want to put 50 in my Roth, you can do it inside the same plan. That plan has been in place in a number of districts in the area for a long time already.
As long as we're in league with contract,
With our contract,
what we need to do, I guess, is to be legal order.
Yes.
We need to protect ourselves as boards.
We do.
We need to have that.
And along with that, ING worked with us on that 403B plan, that is the district's plan. And they house what is called the Plan with Ease program. And that program has sharing information that each of the vendors must provide by law, so that there's a tracking by individual, so that each of the buckets per person that you're allowed to defer or not defer do not exceed in a calendar year. It's for the protection of the board, because as you offer these instruments, you are held liable if there is an overage, an over amount deferred.
You should have on file from us all those documents. I believe we've signed all of those with the plan of these.
Great. And there are other vendors that are also, but we do not have our 403B plan document revised yet to allow the 403B Roth IRA at this time.
So next meeting, there'll be a discussion.
And so I'm working on getting, given that I give that information to the board in timely fashion, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Baldwin, would you like to go forward with the superintendent's recommendations?
Under superintendent's recommendations, the first letters A through I, I'd like, that superintendent would like to recommend that it be voted on and one consent. So I wish to ask for the board to approve the superintendent's recommendations for items A through I. So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mrs. Wright and seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Bernard?
Discussion, please.
Certainly.
On item C,
Item
on item C,
C.
okay, on item C, we are adding payroll clerk back to full-time. And this is important, I'm not against this because this is a very important position. And we do pay our people. The other thing, like we had discussed earlier, I'd like to see this, we had at one point in time said we were going to have a savings. And we weren't able to because we had no way to say, we had nothing, no technology in place or anything to do that when we did not replace the payroll clerk, and we put the payroll clerk in. December was voted, bring in January, back to part-time, 24 hours a week. And now we're going back to full-time, so you have normal staffing, and it's been that way, I mean, the last 5 years.
That's correct. I
Let
will.
me finish. I mean, this is just a thing before we vote. I don't need a response or anything like that. But I just wanted to justify my vote that this is important. And so even though we're increasing the cost back from where we were, at some point down the road, I think we need to look at the technology out there and computers. Because maybe we can get some software or something at one time other districts have. For $30,000, $40,000 a year, that will offset $60,000 or $30,000 a year forever until we do that. And technology is becoming available, and I just think over the next year we owe it to the taxpayers to do that. Otherwise, I'll be voting in favor.
All right, thank you. I move, yes, it was moved by Mrs. Wright and seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Bonacci?
Aye.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wright? Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Okay, under item J, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve a one-year contract for the 2012-2013 school year for the certified employees as presented in exhibit number 5.
So moved. Second. Moved by Mrs. Powers and seconded by Mrs. Wright. Roll call.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wright? Aye. Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci?
Aye.
Item K, employment for certified personnel. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve a 2-year contract for the 2012-13 and 2013-14 school years for certified employees presented in exhibit number 6.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mrs. Wright, and seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Mrs. Wright. Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Panacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Item L, employment for certified personnel. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve a continuing contract for the 2012-13 school year for the certified employees presented in Exhibit number 7.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Spangler, and seconded by Mr. Armstrong. Roll call.
Mrs. Wright. Aye. Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Item N, employment for certified personnel. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve a one-year tutor contract for the 2012-13 school year for the certified employees as presented in Exhibit number 8. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Wright, and seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Mrs. Wright. Aye. Item N, contract non-renewals for the 2011-12 school year. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve to non-renew the following contracts effective at the end of the 11-12 school year, included in but not limited to, and that the board direct the treasurer to deliver notification of such on or before April 30, 2012. The supplementals and extended time is presented in Exhibit number 9. Extended permanent substitutes for Title I, ESL, IDEA tutors, and home instruction tutors, as presented in Exhibit number 10.
So moved.
Second. It's moved by Mr. Bonacci, and seconded by Mrs. Powers. Roll call.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Mrs. Wright. Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Item O, are contract for services with the Harbor Education Services LLC. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the contract with Harbor Education Services LLC to provide specialized educational services during the 2011-12 school year for student number 123607. The cost will be paid out of the appropriate funding system based on rules pertaining to the allowable use of federal IDEA for B funds and excess cost calculation as presented in Exhibit number 11.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Bonacci, and seconded by Mrs. Powers. Roll call.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Mrs. Wright. Aye. Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Item P, OAA interpreters for 11-12 school year. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve interpreters for statewide testing.
So moved. It was moved by Mrs. Powers, seconded by Mr. Spangler. Roll call.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Mrs. Wright. Aye. Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Item Q, cooperating teacher stipends. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the following teachers who have completed the student-teacher mentoring program for spring 2012 in connection with Kent State University and the University of Akron as listed on those universities.
So moved. Second. It's moved by, I'm sorry. Discussion.
Yes, can I just ask one quick question? Is this the flow through?
Yes, this is the money paid directly to the board and we pay them
Flows through,
through.
they used to pay them and now.
Correct.
Correct.
This is it, yes.
I thought it was.
It was moved by Mrs. Wright, seconded by Mrs. Powers. Roll call.
Mrs. Wright.
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Item R. Superintendent wishes to recommend the Board of Education accept the following donation from Mary J. Gilson, donated 1 Proform Crosswalk Plus treadmill to the Stow Munroe Falls High School.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Bonacci, seconded by
Yep.
Mr. Spangler, as they're starting to sound like. And seconded by Mr. Armstrong. Roll call.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Mrs. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Spangler.
Aye.
Mrs. Wright. And that concludes the superintendent's recommendations.
Okay, thank you. And for old business, we have the updated Neola board policies, which is the second reading. And a complete copy of the updated board policies for Neola, Ohio is available in the superintendent's office under separate cover.
Ms. President,
Yes.
I would think in policy 7540.03, the student network and internet acceptable use and safety, and policy 5136, wireless communication devices, were just changed this week after the first reading. So I believe this would be their first reading of those two policies.
My understanding is that's not correct under the situation, that even if it's amended, it's not the case.
Pardon?
So my understanding is that even though it has been amended, that is not the case. It does not revert back to its first reading.
Well, I talked to Mr. Adams today, he was under the impression that we use.
You mean Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller, I talked to him too.
So did I.
It's not
and
the case.
I was
Okay.
told that it would not revert back to the first reading.
Okay, those two have been amended since then, so if someone did request it, that policy, they would need to request.
I think there was an added portion that the superintendent added to it in Mr. Miller's language.
Yes, especially there was extensive changes to 7540.03. There's quite a bit of changes in that.
It was a clarity.
Yes.
I do believe your bylaws do allow, up until the point where the board does vote, that there can be amendments or
Right.
corrections.
Okay, well, that's good, because on the next meeting, I'm going to request that policy 1230, 1240, 1330, and 7540.03 be separated out, so we can vote on those separate.
Okay. I don't think anyone has an objection to that. All right, is there any new business or liaison reports? And is there a reason for an executive session? Okay, can I get a motion for adjournment, please?
Second.
It was moved by Mr. Spangler, seconded by Mr. Armstrong to adjourn at 8:05. Roll call.
Mr. Bonacci?
Aye.
Mrs. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Spangler?
Aye.